the US and Japan have a trade agreement. And if it does anything, it shows Canadians what Carney's up against and why he is now saying he is only going to accept a fair deal for Canadians. Because if this is what's on the table, it's not a fair deal for Canadian taxpayers. And I hope that Carney says no. So let's get into why is this such a bad deal for Japan, such a great deal for the States, and why it would be such a bad deal for Canada to do the same thing. Well, the 10% decrease in tariffs sounds really great because Japan can now export goods into the States and it will only increase their pricing to consumers by 15% instead of 25%. Sounds great, right? Well, they had to pay for that privilege. One, they had to open up their protected rice industry by allowing US rice manufacturers to export rice into Japan markets, which at 0%. And you don't know what's going to happen there, if they're going to flood the market or whatnot. If that's going to end up being cheap rice. I mean, there's a reason why Japan was protecting their rice producers. But the big thing, the big problem with this trade deal is the $550 billion funding deal part of the deal. So Japan has to create a $550 billion fund that Trump can access. Yes, that's right, that Trump can access to build any project that he deems necessary in the US economy. So if he wants to grow the pharmaceutical industry or the semiconductor industry by building manufacturing in the US, he can access this $550 billion fund in order to do that. Now, this is a financing. So it's a financing deal. Japan is financing these projects. So you would think that, okay, now they're probably going to get interest on that money that they are loaning to US companies. So Trump decides it's going to build a factory. They find somebody to operate that factory, and that factory is going to create revenue, right? Well, 90% of that revenue goes back into the coffers of the government, and 10% gets sent to Japan for financing the deal in the first place. So Japan's getting 10% return on investment. So that is great as long as Japan is not wanting to build their economy and has the $550 billion to put into the fund to begin with. Now, Canada, we want to be building our economy. We want to break away from the States. So having to put any sort of funding into a fund for Donald Trump to be able to use whatever way he pleases and only getting maybe 10% return on investment is not a good deal for the Canadian taxpayer. Especially when we have so many other things to be paying for and the government needs to help us. And we only have 41 million people in Canada. We don't have a huge tax base. But here's the good news for Canadians. 75% of what we export to the States is covered under the CUSMA agreement, and it's for at least another year. And as long as it's covered under the CUSMA agreement, it's a free trade, and Canadians can export those nylons that they manufacture here in Canada to the States at a zero tariff. We still have some tariffs on those industries that Trump is trying to kill here in Canada. Our car industry, our steel industry, our lumber industry. And we have plans on how to help those industries to break away from their dependence on the States. So we don't need to be buying access to the States. We already have that access at 0% for 75% of our goods. Now, those things that Trump wants to be importing because he knows that he absolutely needs them in the US, things like our oil and our potash, well, those are at a low rate. It's at like a 10% rate. And I doubt he's going to up that rate because he knows he needs those products. So Canadians, don't expect a deal on August 1st. Understand that 75% of what we do export to the States is still under our free trade agreement. So those companies are still able to sell their products into the States and make money and have no reason to be laying their employees off. It's only those industries that are not under the CUSMA agreement and are being attacked by Trump that need our help. And as Canadians, what we can do to be heroes in this trade war is to continue with the elbows up, buying Canadian and supporting Canadian businesses. There are tons of opportunities out there and more opportunities coming as the government helps these industries by offering up new programs and revenues. Come fall, we'll have the National Projects Office opening up, and we'll have even more idea of what is coming down the pipeline for opportunities to build, opportunities for jobs, opportunities for the second level, the vendors of the people that are going to be building those projects and the jobs that they create, and then the vendors of those companies and the jobs that they create. There's tons of opportunity coming. We just have to hang in there and do our part by being Canadian, which means we be polite and we move on.